All units stand by to copy a safe alert. All units copy a safe alert. It's going to be authority from Pima County Sheriff's Office, last seen at Skyline Drive in Campbell. Occurred on yesterday's date at 12:15 hours. Subject last name will be Guthrie, first of Nancy, date of birth 1/27 of 1942, 84-year-old white female, 5'4", 150, brown and blue. Last name wearing unknown clothing description. Subject was not seen at church and family went to the residence, and subject was not at home. All personal belongings, including a 1021 and wallet and vehicle, were still there. Subject is nowhere to be found. Subject suffers from limited mobility and has medication scheduled to follow up and needs daily. If located, check code 20 and contact Pima County Sheriff's Office. Again, last seen at Skyline and Campbell in Tucson, and a safe alert at 12:35.
Stand by to copy. One item EPB safe alert. One item safe alert will be out of Tucson, Skyline, and Campbell Avenue. We're on February 1st, approximately 12:15 hours. Subject A, Nancy Guthrie, date of birth 1/27/84. White female, 5'4", 150 pounds, brown hair, blue eyes, west. Description for unknown clothing. Subject not seen at a church. Family went to residence and subject was not at their home. 1021 wallet, vehicle were still there. Subject is, again, subject from limited mobility, medication scheduled that they need followed. If located, contact Tucson PD. No additional time, 1309 hours.
Safe alert for the Skyline Drive in Campbell, Pima County, 1611-7. So, safe alert, Skyline Drive in Campbell, Pima County. On yesterday's date, February 1st, at about 12:15 hours, subject date of birth of 1/27/42, of 86 white female, 5'4", 150. Subject wearing clothing. Subject was not seen at church. Residence of subject was not at home. All personal belongings, including one wallet and vehicle, were still there. Subject suffers limited medical medication scheduled to follow and needs due to sick welfare and contact Pima County.
Broadcast of safe alert by authority from Pima County Sheriff's Office, last seen at Skyline in Campbell and Tucson. Safe alert last seen on yesterday's date at 12:15 hours. Subject last name is Guthrie, first of Nancy, 1/27 of 1942. 84-year-old white female, 5'4", 150, brown and blue. Last name wearing unknown clothing. Subject was lost.
District 2 and 12 stand by to copy. One item on the APD summary, safe alert from Skyline and Campbell in Tucson. Districts 2 and 12 copy 10 to locate. One item on this APB summary, a safe alert from Skyline and Campbell in Tucson. Occurred yesterday's date around 12:15 hours. Subject is Nancy Guthrie, date of birth 1/27/42, 84 years of age, white female, 5'4", 150, brown and blue. Last name wearing unknown clothing. Subject was not seen at church, so family went to the residence, and subject was not at home. All personal belongings, including the 1021 wallet and vehicle, was still there, and she was nowhere to be found. Subject suffers from limited mobility and has a medication scheduled to follow that she needs daily. If located, check welfare and contact BCSD. Safe alert out of Tucson, Skyline, and Campbell. District 12 units copy. Safe alert from Skyline and Campbell out of Tucson. Subject is going to be Nancy Guthrie, date of birth 2/1/26. Last seen earlier today around 12:15. Correction, yesterday at around 12:15 hours. Date of birth is 1/27/42. She's an 84-year-old white female, 5'4", 150, brown over blue, unknown clothing description. She was not seen at church or at her residence, and subject was not at home. All her belongings, including 1021 wallet and vehicle, were still at her 1020. She does suffer from limited mobility and has medication scheduled to follow and needs it daily. If located, contact Pima County Sheriff's and code 20 EPD overall correction safe alert. Off ramp at 1424. Just enter units prepared to copy final broadcast for safe alert. Safe alert last in the area of Skyline and Campbell. On the 1st, last seen in the area of Skyline and Campbell around 12:15 hours. Subject going to be Nancy Guthrie, date of birth of 1/27/42, 84 years of age, a white female, 5'4", 150, brown over blue. Last seen wearing unknown clothing. Subject was not seen at church, and family went to residence to check on her at home. All personal belongings, including 1021 and wallet and vehicle, were still there. However, subject was not there. Subject does suffer from limited mobility and needs medication that is left at the house. If contacted, contact county at 1327.
What it do, it's your boy YouTube Juice. Had to chime back in. Let's talk about it. Nothing happened today at all, really. Nothing at all in the past several days, maybe the past week with the Nancy Guthrie case. Still nothing. I just wanted to kind of chime in so we could kind of just give us a place where we could talk about it and give our speculations on it. You know, what's changed? Has your speculation changed? After being dry for so many days, and, we haven't heard any updates on this case at all. I just wonder if anyone's, view of this whole investigation has changed. Do they still feel the same way about it? We did have Luke come out the other day as well as his mother, and had that interview just several days ago. So I don't know if, a lot of people's view has changed based on who you think that suspect could possibly be. Because as far as I know, the only person that, or people that got cleared was Nanny and Tommaso, and the family. So I don't know what that really means, because we all know, we've talked about it before, that you can't, no one's really cleared until we find an actual suspect. But man, Nancy's still missing, guys, and today makes day 35. We're really going on day 36, to be honest. But yeah, Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie, reported missing on February 1st. She was abducted during the night of January 31st after surveillance showed a masked individual at her home, and evidence of a struggle was found. And we all know she went to dinner the night before with Annie and Tommaso, and we know that Tommaso was the one who brought her home. We've learned a lot in this entire case, about Nancy, and learned a little bit about the suspect. As far as Nancy, we learned that she, lived independently. We learned there was blood found on the front porch. What else, man? At one point, we had a ransom. We learned we had over 40,000 tips and still tips coming in daily. Yeah, we've learned a lot. We know that Savannah and her siblings are just trying to continue to seek help from the public. Savannah offered that reward for $1 million for whoever has any information. So hopefully that'll help. You know, who knows? This case has just been crazy. What a case. And I always say, you know, it's not a case until we find a suspect. So we're still sitting here hopeful, hopes high. I felt like a lot of people have kind of just turned it off, and they don't even want to they're not in tune anymore with this investigation, you know. So I'm not, though. I'm not giving up until we figure this out, till we get something, because we haven't got anything at all. And I just want a press. I just want a press. I think we deserve a press by now. I don't know what's taking so long. I really don't. Let's dive into this video here. I wanted to watch this guy. I think his name is Hidden Killer. He's all right. I like the guy. I think he's a growing YouTuber as well. You might not like him. You know, he may come off boring to some people, but I thought they had some interesting things to say tonight. We're just going to kind of recap and just kind of chill and talk about the Nancy Guthrie case. Talk a little bit about Luke tonight. Luke, I still feel like for me that he's the prime. Just because to me, maybe we need to get a doctor in here because his hands look swollen, you know. And I guess I can't really say that they're swollen because, you know, like I'm no doctor and you know, maybe his hands are just fat. But I feel like something's wrong with that hand. And, you know, we had people mentioning something wrong with the hand. And the hand also being swollen with Luke. So I definitely got to talk some Luke tonight. You know, I want to talk about his interview again because I thought the interview was interesting. They showed a full body of him walking into the newsroom or wherever they met. And he, you know, you could see pretty much the full body and it matched perfectly. We talked about it last night, but yeah, I think Luke might still be, you know, the top primary for me. I don't know about anybody else. You know, Carlos is also, he in the mix too, but I don't feel like Carlos has anything to do with it, you know. But, you know, those are the two guys that they haven't been cleared. Another thing is when you get Luke in that interview said that they didn't tell him why they needed that search warrant. And I feel like he lied. Like, I don't feel like he was truthful. I don't know. But I looked it up earlier, and it says that law enforcement is generally required by law to tell you why they are arresting you or searching your property. Upon executing an arrest warrant, officers must inform you of the warrant's existence. And it says, they must show the warrant if requested or if it's in possession, inform you of the charges and show it later. I don't know. Maybe that's just law enforcement. Maybe it doesn't play out the same way with FBI. But the thing is, it wasn't FBI that asked for that search warrant. It was the sheriff. So I guess that does say a lot about what he said because I don't think that he was honest about that. I think he knew why they were, you know, able to get a search warrant. I mean, maybe he had prior history. Maybe that's how they got a search warrant. And I don't know, but there was something that also led to it. Leading up to that, they still had to get the warrant granted from a judge, and for whatever reason, the judge granted them that warrant for whatever reason. We don't know. But he didn't even say that. So I don't know. Luke's interesting. He's interesting. I'll chime in this video real quick. We'll talk some Luke later, though.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We got a lot going on today. Robin Drake is here with us, and Robin's going to be with us every day going forward.
Like the new intro.
As our co-host. So Robin, welcome
military.
from graduating from being guest to co-host, and of course your insight, just completely, I'd say priceless on all these cases that we've been talking about for the last many years. Really excited for you to be here in this capacity and to join in the conversations with all of our guests throughout the week as well. So for folks wondering, well, what about the other guests? They're still here too. Robin's just going to be with us on those conversations as well. So welcome.
You can see the smile on my face just beaming. My goosebumps are going. When you feel, it's so funny. We talk about such unhealthy things all the time, but when you're part of a healthy group, you just get excited. So it is a great pleasure to be with you all.
It's a healthy group. A healthy group talking about unhealthy things.
Yes, which is crazy talking about the uncrazy.
Exactly. We have spent now 4 weeks, going on 5, dissecting every visible detail in the Nancy Guthrie case on the suspect, and we're gonna talk about the Nancy Guthrie case in 2 different lanes here this morning. We're going to talk about the suspect, and we're going to talk about the investigation and the myth of competency of each.
Yes, I love that. Yes,
of each, because we're looking at the suspect. That's what we're going to talk about first. The Walmart backpack, the awkward holster, the improvised camera cover, or whatever that is there, and the assumption underneath all of this is that this guy knew what he was doing from some, and others saying, well, look how sloppy he is. He's grabbing foliage to cover the camera. Both, you can't really have them both coexisting, being competent and incompetent at the same time. I don't know, or maybe you can. Let's jump into to all of this, because this is something that I think a lot of people are trying to run through their mind with some sort of sensibility. And I think a lot of it comes down to do we sometimes expect things to be bigger and more grand and have a greater meaning than they actually are in real life?
Yeah, boy, as I texted you nonstop over the weekend, Tony, as I typically do when I start doing my program prep, the interesting thing that happens to us, especially when we deal with cases that hit a national level, which is the ones we typically cover.
By the way, I forgot to mention there was a woman found dead in Phoenix. As I know, so far that person hasn't been identified yet. I don't think that's Nancy Guthrie, though. I don't know if you guys overheard that, but there was a lady found dead in, I think it was Canal, something like that, Canal, Phoenix. And I think that would be about almost 3 hours from here, probably two and a half hours from Tucson.
Is that each of us, including us, we create a confirmation bias, and we've talked about confirmation biases all the time, and our confirmation biases are based upon things we've been exposed to throughout our lives, especially in recency. And especially with cases like this, our confirmation biases typically come from 2 things. One, what we see and absorb from TV, and things like Criminal Minds and all these great Hollywood and television productions that talk about the idyllic world in which investigations take place, which there never is that way. And also what our hopes and expectations are as set by people that talk about these things, pundits like us and others. And so when an individual then starts consuming the reality of what is based on the confirmation bias they have, and they mismatch, they think something's amiss, and they start loving to poke holes at it. And especially when you don't have the 24-hour turnaround of resolution or the 1-hour resolution that we're used to seeing on TV, and I know a lot of people have said this, but it still hits us that something must be amiss. And then what happens is people that love poking holes, and what I love about what we do is we don't poke holes, we examine. Someone pokes a hole, let's go down the rabbit hole. Someone pokes a hole, let's examine that. What happens is that when something doesn't go the way we want it to go, we're going to start having a negative confirmation bias, only looking for what someone's doing wrong, what's going wrong in the investigation. So we're always going to see things that are going wrong. And will we always find it? Yes, because it's human nature. No one is perfect. No investigation is perfect. But what happens is you start ignoring all the things that are going right. And so that's what I've done and continue to do is like, I just always, for some reason, I have this ability to take this pragmatic, objective of view. Let's look at the data. Let's look at the research and let's do comparisons to all these things. And so on par, and that goes with both the investigation itself as well as the culprit. You know, what was normal, what wasn't normal, what stood out, what didn't stood out. And to your point, when you started out in your opening, you can have both at the same time, I think. I think this guy that approached the door, he had reps. I remember the first time I saw that video image of him, so covered up, so well covered, you know, face, everything. I mean, just think about this. He was, just do a compare and contrast to Kohberger and him. That was Kohberger's first rep in trying to go in and kill someone, and he was sloppy. He did a lot of things right based on what he thought was going to happen, and then things went sideways when you had stress escalation hit. Things didn't go the way he wanted. He leaves nice sheets behind, DNA and video footage of cars, all this thing went awry, and also what he was wearing. It was striking to them. And then you look at this guy, he had reps of hiding identity, I think, because we haven't found much.
Mm-hmm.
There were still flaws in it. And when he hit things he wasn't expected, that's when we start seeing it hit a little chaos for him, like taking branches and putting over ring cams and things. Or even, we'll go back to the door selection. I think his selection of going in that front door, not a side door, side window back by the pool, that was a major boo-boo on his part because there was no ring cams back there.
Well, that to me, that's what strikes me about the whole damn thing as being off, is he went to the front door. He wasn't prepared for a doorbell camera.
Right.
But yet he has reps in this. How can the two both be true? I guess that's, I mean, to me, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a criminal. I'm not hitting up houses.
But I think I think that makes it quite obvious that he's not the only guy there. Because if we've proven that he's been there multiple times, there's no way in hell there's not another guy there. Obviously, the guy that we see in the picture, which we confirmed he has on different shoes, may be a different guy. It's possible that these guys could have similar builds. You know, if it's two different, you know, if it's two different guys. I mean, obviously, a lot of us think it's the same guy in the video, and the same guy we see that we think we see the same guy in the photo, showing that he visited another time. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like that could almost be a different guy, but they have very, very similar, you know. They look about the same size, you know. I don't know. It's highly possible, but in this case, anything's possible. This is why he did good, because he has so many people thinking so many ways. It's insane.
Doing that, the first thing, if someone said, Tony, today's physical challenge on Double Dare is breaking into your neighbor's house. You're not going to be arrested. Just go get the flag in the upstairs, get on the hamster wheel, and then you get it and you run out and you get covered in slime. Something like that, if it was like a non-threatening, evil thing to do. But if I were to do that, and they were like, okay, you got to kind of plan this out, the first thing I'd be thinking of, a doorbell, and you don't want to get caught, so we don't want to, you can't be identified. That's the first thing that would be on my mind. How is that not the first thing that's on this guy's mind that supposedly has some sort of reps here?
So here's a way to think about it.
Okay.
Again, thought experiment. So all the nonverbal experts out there are saying that he was fluid, he didn't stress anything, he looked, you know, completely natural of doing what he's doing at their front door because he didn't have halting behavior. But like you said, he was a little weird with that ring cam on the front. So what would make something like that happen? What would make behavior like that? If he was having reps and breaking and entering of homes that didn't have ring cams, that stands to reason. What kind of homes don't have that? Is it a Nancy Guthrie kind of home, or is it a lower income kind of home? See what I mean? So,
or the age of the resident type of home too. I guess that's something else to consider in this in this equation because, look, I do not know the
I disagree.
demographics of the neighborhood.
I disagree.
I mean, and it's kind of a blanket statement
Because
to say that
I do
everybody
Instacart,
down there is
and
older and retired. That's
a
not
majority
true by any
of
stretch the
people's
imagination.
homes that I
But
go
there is a
drop
higher
off grocery
population
orders
of that
to
there. And if you're in
have a Ring
higher
camera.
income neighborhood, bigger homes.
So I disagree. I mean, I guess, you know, there are older people out there that, you know, they're not up to par with technology, but the Ring cams have been around long enough, you know, for a majority of people to start getting them. It's almost like weird to go to a house without a Ring camera. There's people in apartments. There's a lot of apartments that have Ring cameras.
Older
Not just homes.
Statistically, you're probably going to have more older, wealthier residents that may also not be as technologically inclined. So that may also then lead to maybe not as many Ring doorbells that
Yeah,
all of
that's
us
what I-
in the
I didn't
demographic
say
of
that.
25 to
Tiger, what
64
up?
have.
I can't believe this.
And you get
Nothing.
above.
Me neither, but at the same time I can, because I don't know, I believe like if you cover up like this guy and you limit the you know, the amount of mistakes that you make doing something like this, I feel like, you know, if you can almost make no mistakes, then you're good. You're good. There's no way they're catching you. I don't see, I mean, with the I believe in the technology we have today. Don't get me wrong, but I don't see any real big mistake that he made that's going to lead us up to finding this guy. I don't. I feel like we're just hoping for the best at this point with the whole genealogy thing. You know, I feel like time's going to go by and go by and go by and go by, and eventually we're going to probably start to come to the realization that this guy got away. Like, this guy got away. I don't know. Then on the other end, sometimes I feel like someone's going to come forward. I feel like that's what's going to be the crack in this case. I feel like that's the only way. I don't know how much I really believe in the genealogy thing that is going to really work. You know, but again, that's why we need that press, because, you know, it would just be nice to know how they feel about the genealogy, how confident they feel about, you know, this leading us up to finding the suspect. You know, because there definitely could be a chance that we still don't find him with this. I think a lot of us are convinced that with the genealogy thing, you know, it's going to for certain happen. I'm not getting my hopes up, because I feel like it's going to just be a dead end, another dead end. And that might be like one of the most shocking things in this case. Another dead end again. I don't know how many days are going to go by until we come to the realization that this guy did almost everything right. But then you got people on the other end like, nah, this guy, he made a lot of mistakes. He was an amateur. He was dumb. I don't know.
That you go 65 plus, I would imagine your amount of people with Ring doorbells dramatically drops.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of it too. I'm just kind of openly throwing that into the conjecture.
So basically what we're looking at is what looks like normal, natural behavior that he has reps in and what doesn't. And obviously the way he took care of that Ring cam was different than what he was expecting. Or he's just that stupid thinking that thing would work again. And I know people like to jump to, well, if he's that stupid, how come he hasn't been caught yet? Well, doesn't mean just because you haven't been caught doesn't mean you're smart. It just means that what you did was good enough today not to get caught, because there's a lot of really dumb people that have never been caught. Dumb luck plays a lot into these things as well. But because I will never, ever give credit to people that do this type of thing as having high intelligence or high EQ or IQ.
Well, and two, if we look at if we look at just B&Es and the amount that take place and the amount that actually gets solved, if this was that gone bad, a good chunk of them never get solved.
Yep.
And if this was so, in its simplicity, people get away with that shit all the time.
Yep.
The fact that we have a missing person here with it, who could possibly be dead, it makes it a different type of case, because it doesn't. If she's dead, let's assume she's dead for the sake of the argument. It makes it a different type of case because it wasn't in. I'm going to go with probably non-intentional homicide here. Something happened. It was not exactly what another homicide case may look like in terms of how they would investigate it, because essentially it's just the caveat here, the one-off here, is the fact that there's a body they had to get rid of as well.
And then what happens if he is in another country? What happens if he's from another country? How is that going to lead us to a person's DNA, you know? Is this just amongst America, or is this all over the country, or all over the, you know, expanding into other countries is what I'm really saying, you know? So I don't know. How is, you know, I don't know. I don't know, guys. This could be another dead end. I just really want to know how confident they feel about this genealogy test. How confident are they that it's going to lead us up to finding this guy?
And if it was as simple as picking her up and taking her out, it's basically a B&E that took a person with them. And if they know how to dispose of the person, or I don't know, it changes the dynamic. It really, this doesn't fit the traditional B&E route. This doesn't fit the traditional route of a kidnapping. This doesn't fit the traditional route of a homicide, because I think it was never meant to be that. It was meant to be something far simpler, far less involved, and this is what we got. And somebody who knows now how not to get caught.
Yeah, well, if you look at, and I'm seeing all the comments, which is great. And again, I just play the averages of the research, and the research still edges about 60% that this was a solo act. But could there be other people, accomplices involved in that side house? Yeah, there's all kinds of things that could happen in this. But if you look at the intent,
Tiger says, I bet JLR made over 50K. Oh, indeed, for sure.
I always go back to intent. As I said, John Douglas, first profile in the FBI says is that you got to look at intent. If the intent in some way was profit, either profiting by taking her and ransoming her, or profit by stealing something, complete failure. That's what I'm talking about. Now, successfully getting away so far, but the intent was a complete failure. And if someone says, because I hear it out there with the conspiracy theorists, the intent was to get back at Nancy, to not Nancy, but Savannah, to make her suffer and all these things. Okay, well, if we look at all the research on that, there is always then some messaging that goes out, especially, so think about this. If for some crazy reason that the messaging going into TMZ was anywhere related, not a spear phishing attempt like I think it is and others, then why not put out somewhere in media that, hey, this was because Savannah was X, Y, and Z? And it's not there because it wasn't. There's a profit motive in here in some way. So if people want to believe it was for her abduction, okay, that didn't work. Or for people like me that think it was a B&E that went sideways, still failed. So that's where you always got to go back to what was the intent, where did it fall apart, and what did this guy do well? Well, he hid his identity good enough today to not have that happen.
I think people oftentimes conflate sophisticated with successful. Sometimes simple can be successful. Very simple can be successful, and that might be what we're looking at here.
Yeah, I think so. We've covered so many cases where the simplest answer is usually what happens. You know, the more time that passes and the less information we have, the more we like to fill the gaps with conjecture. And a lot of times the conjecture will spool out of control, and it's easy to cascade. I remember you made such a profound statement a couple of weeks ago when you said it's not a far leap. But when you cascade so many conspiracies on this, and then we think it's this, and then this, the leap from here to here of crazy is so small. But when you then go back down to the grassroots level of what's the intent, the intent is profit, it failed. And what could be the profit? And I'll still entertain both sides, that the main intent was abduction or the main intent was B&E going sideways. Either way, complete failure, except in the fact that he hid his identity well enough to not be found yet.
When we're this far in now, we're going on week 5. And seemingly, at least on the outside, we don't know much. They seem to still be asking the public for any information that they can glean off of it.
I wonder, does this give this guy time to, get out of the country, perhaps? I mean, we're taking so long to figure this out. It's, and obviously, people have been found in other countries, so, it may not be an issue, and they might not even be worried about it. Obviously they have bigger things to worry about right now. But, I mean, is this giving him time to not only leave the country, but maybe even disguise himself, I don't know, man. I don't know. This is a really tough, case, an easy case to overthink just because of, all the changes and all the things that's happened. And it's just a really special investigation they got going on. It's a special case.
Seemingly, at least on the outside, we don't know much. They seem to still be asking the public for any information that they can glean off of it. Do you think we're ever going to figure out who this guy is at this point? Or, statistically, there's a lot of these cases that just go nowhere. The fact that we have a microscope on this doesn't necessarily change that fact. It just means more of us are watching. But not getting an answer to things like this, a missing persons case, that's incredibly common. The latter is not.
Yeah, I got two sides of this one too, Tony.
Yeah.
The probability at this point of finding her, it diminishes more and more every day. Again, the research says that we are more and more in the likelihood of not. But, and I know we'll cover this in the next segment, but if you look at the success rate of not, every day, again, the research says that we are more and more in the likelihood of not. But, and I know we'll cover this in the next segment, but if you look at the success rate of Pima County Sheriff's Office when it comes to solving homicides or abductions like this, last year they had 12 for 12. They're 100%.
I don't want to say like this, because I think like this caveats it into those type of a bucket. I don't think this is the same bucket. Because I think
they had 12 for 12. They're 100%.
I don't
like this rate of Pima County Sheriff's Office when it comes to solving homicides or abductions like this. Last year they had 12 for 12. They're 100%.
I don't want to say like this, because I think like this caveats it into those type of a bucket. And I don't think this is the same bucket.
Right. But so we have a missing person that inevitably is going to be in a homicide. I think this, so when you're looking at strictly homicides, that's where they have, what I'm saying by when I say that their success rate of clearance rate, their investigators are really, really good. I think they're detectives, and we said this from the beginning too. Even from the very beginning, I kind of dismissed the sheriff to the side because kind of the vibe I was getting from the investigative side seemed pretty spot on. I saw a lot of movement. I saw a lot of things happening at that investigative level that's below the executive level that is the mouthpiece of the organization. And when I did the deep dives this past weekend on it, I was even more impressed than I thought it was going to be by it. So their investigators are some of the best in the country. So if you're looking at national average, the probability is low. But if you're looking at Pima County, the probability is high. And I think this is a key point to make. Also, I really wish they would come out and highlight some of these stats to the public, because right now in my mind, we have a two-prong attack going after the perpetrator of this / people who are witting to who did this, that are the ones that could call in a tip and say what this was and solve this thing. All right. In order to do that, you have to compel them to want to. They have to feel unsafe. They have to feel like the noose is closing on them and they're going to go to prison if they don't come forward, something like that. Savannah is doing beautiful messaging. Matter of fact, it's always pretty interesting to me that after we come out on our show of what we think would be a very good method for her to use this empathetic appeal, to give that olive branch to say, hey, things go sideways. You probably didn't mean it to be like this, so that you can draw someone out to want to. But in order for them to want to grab that olive branch, there has to be pressure in another area to force them through. That pressure comes from investigation saying we're getting closer, and then giving data points.
But the problem is we haven't
they're getting closer on. Not the next day the sheriff saying
this is so interesting. I can't even believe I can't believe we're calling this guy an amateur, because every single time, the last time I checked, every single time we've thought and we've gotten closer, we're right back where we started. I mean, it's facts. So I don't know how this guy is an amateur, because so far it's like a game of chess and he's winning. I gotta disagree with the amateur thing. I mean, I think a lot of these guys, and that's good. I mean, I want to be confident too that we're gonna find this guy, because it seems like a lot of people are confident that we're gonna find this guy, but so far it looks like we're not.
Well, the DNA fell through. Okay. But what you can do is you can roll out stats like I just researched this last weekend and say, hey, listen, the rate of successful investigations of the turnarounds of this, clearing rates, best in the country. I mean, this county ranks in the top in the country for clearance rates of not this type of crime, but homicides. That puts pressure on.
It does. It does. I think it needs to be caveated, though, with there has been a lot of criticism of his department, a lot of criticism about cutting corners. So I mean,
that too.
Without doing doing it, and the thing is, that's another rabbit hole too to deep dive into. Is okay. Well, is there criticism of this? I mean, not just for the sake of criticism of like, oh, you're doing a good job, let me tear you down. No, if you're doing a good job, great. But how do you have such a good success rate here and so much noise around you of distrust and hate? There's something else. There's something going on here, and there is a lot of issues within the department. There's a lot of people who have been demoted and they've claimed for political reasons. Good investigators, good people who have worked in the department for years, who have contributed to that success rate, no longer in those positions. You have there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of questions, and a lot of questions of cutting corners on some of those very investigations that have the 100% success rate. So I guess the question is, how did you get to point of checking the box of successfully, we've investigated this, we got the right guy, do we though? I guess,
right.
I mean, and with that would be an interesting one to go down that rabbit hole too. And I think it was like 12. I mean, there's not a ton of homicides here every year in this county.
So I looked at all these numbers.
Yeah,
And I even went down to the actual allegations against the sheriff, the internal conflicts.
Sure, yeah.
I looked at everything. I do. I spent way too much time in this in my life. And actually, to the viewers' comment a few minutes ago, the FBI should have been called in on lead. Actually, they don't have jurisdiction because it's not cross state. It's only if it remains in the state and at the local level if it doesn't have interstate things going on. So it could not be handed off as FBI's primary in situation, because there's not a statute that the FBI could cover on this one. So that answers that question. And it's not saying that you're wrong. It's like it'd be great, but there's not a mechanism for that. And when it comes to the internal stuff, because I went down this rabbit hole too, Tony. So the internal allegations against the sheriff, those allegations actually, they fall in with the norms of every elected sheriff across the country. There's that is actually pretty normal. Now, I'm saying that the normal is acceptable. It's normal. The vast majority of them are anonymous. There's been 2 that are only named by person, is actually the deputy and the former one that ran against him. And so those allegations are actually, they're talking about leadership style internally. They're talking about issues. That is a very, very common complaint. It's not, there's in other words, everything internally that they're saying about him is hitting baseline of what typically happens with an elected official in a crime of this case that hits its notoriety. This is not excusing any behavior that we don't like, that we don't think is right. I'm just telling you, falls within.
You might as well have, bro, because so far, just like Terry said a second ago, he's basically been praising the sheriff the entire time, due to the fact that they're 12 of 12 based on homicides. No one cares, bro. No one cares. This is not a normal homicide, if it is that. This is not a normal kidnapping. This is not normal. We're not used to something like this happening.
The norms, because I went in, it's always funny, I go into my own confirmation biases of saying, I think we probably have something here. I'm going to look it up, and we'll probably find the smoking gun, and we're going to get great clickbait on it, and we're going to say this guy's bad because of X, Y, and Z. And you know what happens? Baseline, except on the clearance rate. Now, I'm not crediting the sheriff with the clearance rate. I'm crediting his team with the clearance rate. Now, he's the head of it, so he gets credit for it. But when it comes to it, he's on track. Now, granted, 12 homicides cleared last year. That's not a lot, but for the county his size, it's slightly below the average of other suburban counties across the country. I got all the stats here. There are a few counties that are better. Maricopa County with Joe Arapahoe, Hillsborough County.
Maricopa County is not a county you want to go. You want to go to. If there's one place that in all of Arizona that's been like known for being racist, it would be Maricopa County. You don't want to go there. I believe their jail is tents. It's not an actual like building, so you're outside when you go to jail in a tent.
Wake County Sheriff's Department in Raleigh, Tampa, Dallas, these suburbs, they have slightly above his averages for clearance rates, but not much. All the rest across the country for the same size of the population, he's above, way above, because the clearance rates on them is roughly 50 to 60% on the best. Ooh. See what I mean? It's you just keep going down the rabbit hole, because that way, what I'm hoping to do in this is kind of clear the calm the noise and let them do their job, and then elect someone else if you don't like them next time. Because is he dislikable? Yes. Does he do things does his image contrast to what we expect and want him to do? Do we want him to go in basketball games or going to the gym the next morning where people can see that he's out and about just living life normally when there's a big investigation on? No. Because he doesn't have that kind of self-awareness that he shouldn't be doing that kind of shit, but he was. But is it affecting the investigation? I don't think it did.
Want more on this case and others?
Is the margin Chris Nanos won by in November of 2024 out of nearly 500,000 ballots cast in Pima County Sheriff's race? The difference between Nanos keeping his badge and Heather Lappin taking it from him was less than the capacity of a mid-sized concert venue. The Board of Supervisors has now requested outside investigations into his conduct twice. His own deputies voted no confidence. He put his political opponents on administrative leave weeks before the election in a move that even fellow Democrats called election interference. And now he's the face of the most high-profile missing person investigation in the country, the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. And the criticism has gone from local grumbling to national scrutiny. So, with all of that, with the documented complaints and the razor-thin mandate and the investigations and the national spotlight, what can actually be done to remove him? It's a question a lot of people are throwing around. The answer is the part that should genuinely concern people. Not just in Pima County. Everywhere in Arizona, really everywhere throughout our country, because the answer functionally is almost nothing. An elected sheriff in Arizona occupies one of the most insulated positions in American government, and the levers that people assume exist, the ones they talk about on social media, the ones they demand their supervisors pull, either don't work or the way people think or don't exist at all.
Wow.
We're going to get into why that is, and why Nanos is seemingly being able to operate the way he is, really without consequence. Don't like me? Too bad. You can't get rid of me. Disagree with me? I don't care. You can't get rid of me. Can I just say a bunch of crazy random shit out there and contradict myself left and right? Maybe not really give anybody confidence in this investigation. In fact, make everybody feel far less confident. Don't care. Doesn't matter. Can't get rid of me. That's what's going on. That's the reality of the situation. It is. Give me your thoughts in the comment section
Yeah, sorry, big
on
welcome
YouTube
back.
and on our Substack. I'm going to go through and explain this in greater detail so you fully understand. Press subscribe while we're doing it. To understand why, you have to understand what a sheriff actually is under Arizona law. And it's not what most people assume. Under the Arizona Constitution, Article 12, Section 3, the sheriff is constitutionally created, independently elected officer. That's what he is. Not appointed by the Board of Supervisors, not subordinate to the Board of Supervisors, not
Let me
answerable.
run that back so we can hear that again.
Press subscribe while we're doing it. To understand why, you have to understand what a sheriff actually is under Arizona law. And it's not what most people assume. Under the Arizona Constitution, Article 12, Section 3, the sheriff is constitutionally created, independently elected officer. That's what he is. Not appointed by the Board of Supervisors, not subordinate.
One more time. He said that really
The
fast.
sheriff is constitutionally created, independently elected officer. That's what he is. Not appointed by the Board of Supervisors, not subordinate to the Board of Supervisors, not answerable to the governor. The sheriff is elected directly by the voters of the county and holds that office in an independent constitutional officer for a 4-year term. The
Yeah.
Board of
Like the
Supervisors
president of the
and the
police.
sheriff are, legally speaking, co-equal. The board controls the budget. That's their leverage. They can fund or defund. They can publicly criticize. They can pass resolutions expressing their displeasure, but they cannot fire the sheriff. They cannot suspend the sheriff. They cannot override his operational decisions or tell him how to run an investigation
He's
or
the
go
guy.
pound sand.
No.
This was reinforced just last year in 2025.
Wow.
The Arizona Supreme Court ruled that in Sanchez v. Maricopa County that a county cannot remove a sheriff from office absent specified constitutional circumstances unrelated to the exercise of law enforcement authority.
Yeah, Shannon, welcome back.
The
Big
court
welcome.
went way out of its way to say that the relationship between a board of supervisors and a sheriff is not hierarchical. These are not employer and employee. These are parallel elected officials with separate constitutional
basically the
mandates. So
president.
when people
Tori says
say
praying
the
for a
board of
break in the Guthrie
supervisors
case.
should
Yeah,
do
same
something
here,
about
same
matters,
here. I
the
really
board
hope
has
that
essentially done
we get
everything
something
it
soon.
legally can. It's
As
requested
I was just saying, I feel like
investigations twice.
it's
It publicly called him
all
out
going to
after-
continue to keep leading up to nothing. Is how I feel. I feel like we're every time we feel like we have something in this case, we're back to square one. And yet, like I said earlier, we keep calling this guy an amateur, but how is it so that every time we take a step forward, we're taking a step back? Every single time. So, I mean, if he's an amateur, how is it so that that's happening? He must have did something right. I mean, I'm hoping that, the mistake that he made as far as this DNA thing is, going to work out. But like I said, I just would like to know how confident they are that this thing is going to roll over leading up to us finding our suspect.
After the Lappin suspension, it sought outside review from both the Arizona Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney. These are the tools. That's the whole toolbox right there. And once you sent those letters and made those votes, you're done. So what about the mechanisms that theoretically exist beyond the board that 7 of you are screaming at me right now saying, what about this? Well, there's 3. Let's talk about those 3. And each one is either functionally impossible, legally inapplicable, or already been tried. The first is the recall election. Arizona Constitution, Article 8, Part 1 provides that any elected official can be recalled by the voters. The mechanism is real. It's in the Constitution. People point to it like it's a fire alarm that you just kind of pull and it works. It's not. It's more like assembling a fire truck from scratch in a burning building. Here's the math. To trigger a recall election for the Pima County Sheriff, petitioners need valid signatures equal to 25% of the total votes cast in the last general election for that office.
Right. Knocked down that bottle. What? I thought the killer. I thought there was a killer in here or something, man. Damn. See, that's what I'm saying, bro. This old Nancy Guthrie thing is creeping me out, man. Heard a bottle drop, but I think my daughter kicked the bottle on the floor. I thought somebody was breaking it in. I'm like, oh my God. Whew. My goodness. Anyways, Lord have mercy. See, this is exactly why they need to find this guy. The minute I thought I heard something, I jumped up so fast right now, yo. My goodness. Where was the chat? Where were we?
That theoretically exist beyond the board. That seven.
I gotta see that. Let me see what I jumped up so fast. Yo, that was crazy. What? I gotta see that real quick.
Of you are screaming at me right now saying, what about this? Well, there's three. Let's talk about those three. And each one is either functionally impossible, legally inapplicable, or already been tried. The first is the recall election. Arizona Constitution, Article 8, Part 1 provides that any elected official can be recalled by the voters. The mechanism is real. It's in the Constitution. People point to it like it's a fire alarm that you just kind of pull and it works. It's not. It's more like assembling a fire truck from scratch in a burning building. Here's the math. The trigger, or to trigger a recall election for the Pima County Sheriff, petitioners need valid signatures equal to 25% of the total votes cast in the last general election for that office. In 2024, approximately 487,301 votes were cast in the sheriff's race. 25% of that is roughly 121,825 valid, verified signatures. You have 120 days to collect them. Go! It's just over 1,000 verified signatures per day, every single day, for 4 months straight. And that's the number you need to survive verification, not the number you need to collect. Signatures get thrown out for bad addresses, illegible handwriting, people who aren't registered in the right district, circulator errors, missing dates. In any real-world petition drive, you plan on a rejection rate. Realistically, to land on 121,825 clean signatures.
I think Nanos is well-liked anyway, so, I mean, he wouldn't get fired regardless. He just probably won't be voted for again the next go-around. I wonder what year he's in. I mean, I think he may be almost done. I mean, I don't know. I think he was just elected. I don't know when he was elected. I can't remember. I read about it, but I don't remember when he was elected, so I don't know.
You need to collect somewhere in the range of 140,000 to 150,000 raw signatures. That requires an organized, funded, sustained grassroots infrastructure operating across a county that stretches over 9,000 square miles with a population nearing 1 million people. For context, the most famous recall effort in Arizona history targeted Governor Evan Mecham in 1987. That was a statewide effort with a massive institutional support, widespread media coverage, and bipartisan outrage over canceling Martin Luther King Day. It succeeded. The Mecham was impeached before the recall election took place. A county-level recall of a sheriff in a county where the electorate is split almost perfectly down the middle with no institutional machinery already in place, that's a near impossibility under current conditions. And even if it somehow succeeded, even if every signature held up and the recall election was called, Nanos would appear on the ballot as a candidate. Other candidates could file to run against him. Whoever gets the most votes wins. Nanos could win his own recall election, and if he does, no further recall petition can be filed against him for the remainder of his term unless the petitioners reimburse the county for the full cost of the prior recall election. So the recall exists on paper. In practice, it's a mechanism designed for a level of civic mobilization that almost never materializes. So there's that. You're like, whoa, okay, so that one's not going to work. The second lever is criminal prosecution.
I think he's pretty much talking about how he could get Nanos fired, I guess. I mean, I don't really think this is really relevant because I don't think he's going anywhere regardless. I think it won't happen until, they reelect, whatever they do when they, reelect someone else to be chief of police.
Elected official is convicted of a felony. That's a path to removal. And this is the one people have been banking on. Whether they realize it or not, the Board of Supervisors has twice asked outside agencies to investigate Nanos. The first time was in 23 over his handling of the Ricky Garcia sexual assault case, a situation where a sergeant in his department was accused of essaying a fellow deputy, and Nanos allegedly put the internal investigation on hold. Supervisors voted 3-2 to request an Arizona Attorney General, or DPS, to investigate. Attorney General Chris Mays accepted that referral. Her office conducted the investigation. The result, no criminal wrongdoing found. Case closed.
Wow.
The second time was in November of 24 after Nanos placed Lappin on administrative leave and suspended the head of the deputies union in the final weeks of the election. Supervisors voted unanimously to request both the Arizona AG and the U.S. Attorney investigate whether those actions constituted criminal conduct or election interference. The AG's office acknowledged the request. Beyond that, silence. No charges have been filed. No public update has been issued. If charges were to materialize, they'd require a trial, which could take months or years, and a conviction, which requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The bar isn't just high, it's really prosecutorial, not political. Bad judgment, public embarrassment, operational failures, thin-skinned press conferences, even conduct that looks retaliatory, none of that is automatically criminal. And 2 investigations have now either closed without charges or stalled without public action. So there's your other one. What about the third lever, you ask? What's behind door number 3? Well, it's a brand new car. A third lever is the one that gets thrown around the most on social media and in comment sections, and it is the one that flat out does not apply. Impeachment. People hear the word and assume it works like it does on a federal level, that some legislative body can bring charges and remove the official. In Arizona, impeachment exists under Article 8, Part 2 of the state constitution. It applies to the governor and other state and judicial officers, except justices of courts not of record. That language matters. A county sheriff is not a state officer. The sheriff is a county officer. created by Article 12 of the Constitution, elected by county voters operating under county jurisdiction. The Arizona House of Representatives cannot impeach a county sheriff. The Arizona Senate cannot try a county sheriff. There is no version of Arizona impeachment law that reaches county-level elected officials. It's not a matter of political will. It's not a matter of votes. The constitutional authority does not exist. You could get every single member of the Arizona legislature to agree that a county sheriff should be removed, and they would have no legal mechanism to do it. Impeachment is off the table. Not difficult, not unlikely, just legally impossible. And this is where the frustration needs to shift from the specific of the systematic or the systemic here, because this isn't really about Chris Nanos. It's about a structural gap in democratic accountability that's been baked into Arizona's government since 1912, the year the Titanic sunk. Arizona's constitution was written by people who were deeply skeptical of concentrated government power.
Wow.
It was one of the most progressive populist state constitutions of its era. Direct democracy tools like recall, initiative, and referendum were embedded into the foundation specifically because the framers didn't trust appointed officials, didn't trust backroom deals, and wanted the voters to have the final say. That instinct was...
You know, somebody made a saying, and they said that, because I'm kind of referring to the suspect. You know how the suspect, a lot of people have been saying that the suspect's an amateur, and I think he made a reference. He said, amateurs built Noah's Ark. Professionals built the Titanic. Let that sink in. Amateurs built Noah's Ark. Professionals built the Titanic.
Admirable. The unintended consequences is that between elections, there's almost no meaningful check on an independently elected county officer. The sheriff answers to the voters every 4 years. Between those elections, the only realistic mechanism is a recall that requires a mobilization effort most communities simply cannot execute. A criminal prosecution that requires conduct rising to the level of a felony, or an impeachment process that constitutionally cannot touch them. The system that was designed to protect elected officials from political interference.
So basically, it's like pretty much impossible to get Nanos removed from his position, to get him fired. In other words, is pretty much what he's saying. It would be very, very hard for you to get him impeached, and you can't even get him impeached, is what he was saying. So you know, there's just no way that there's no way you could get Nanos fired. So really, all in all, he's not going anywhere. He's not going nowhere. But I mean, I think he had a point. It's not about Nanos. It's his team. You know, I think it's more so his team, because he's not showing up to these crime scenes. He is, but he's not going to ever be the first initial person, or he's not going to be that person that shows up at the scene first. So he's never really. As far as the entire how the investigation goes, I guess that falls back on him, because he's the one who has full control of everything. You know, he's definitely has a lot of things that he needs to address amongst these sheriffs that are out here. But, you know, there's obviously a lot that he's doing wrong as well. So, but it's easy to separate him from it because he's not really a part. He's not really there. He's really like the last guy to show up. So I think Brianna Whitney was talking about Nanos. I wanted to chime in on her.
I want to start with things that we actually
but she also,
today.
I wanted to play this video with her and Luke as well, though.
She was at the Today Show today. in studio with her coworkers, with her friends, giving them hugs, thanking them.
This girl's growing. I
praying
think
together.
she's
So we know she has now left
she's not bad.
Tucson to go back, and she plans to return to the Today Show. They didn't give a time on that, but that is her plan from there. So on the personal side of things, Savannah trying to go back to a place that she also loves and really a second family to her, which is the Today Show and NBC family. Meanwhile, what else did we learn this week? The DNA on the pair of gloves that was found on the side of the road about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. And that's a place, I saw the area that it was just like right off one of the main drags. That DNA came back as a match to a nearby restaurant worker. And that person is not considered to be part of the investigation, according to authorities. What does that mean? That means that that person is not considered to be a person of interest, to be a suspect, none of that. And so that's important when you're talking about, is that glove related or not? No, it doesn't seem like it is. And I know a lot of people were hoping that there was going to be some answers. There's also been a lot of other gloves found in the area that were part of the investigation. We're going to get into that in a second as well. But as far as other new tidbits of information, we also know the FBI's Violent Crime Task Force was back out at Nancy Guthrie's home and neighborhood today. They were talking to different neighbors as the investigation
this was yesterday.
is ongoing. But again, we still don't know where Nancy
FBI
is.
went,
We still don't know
out to
the
going door to door
the
again.
legitimacy of the ransom notes. Even the first 2 that came in to the news stations and TMZ that had those deadlines on them, we still don't know if those are credible or not. There's been alleged other notes that have come in. We just don't know and don't have any more answers on that. We do know that mixed DNA from inside Nancy Guthrie's home is still being tested in a lab that has not come back yet. And so we're still waiting on that. One question that people had was, did the DNA from the glove, was that linked to the restaurant worker through genetic genealogy? I asked PCSD that yesterday because it was confusing. They were doing all sorts of different testing. And as you recall, the reason that they were doing genetic genealogy testing on the gloves was because they told us that it didn't come back to a hit in CODIS, which is the FBI's database. So when I asked them that, and for clarification, was that genetic genealogy? Was that another, private lab or something different database? They just said they wouldn't provide additional details. So we still don't know. We can assume, though, it's not through CODIS, so it would have either been genetic genealogy or...
Yeah, Tiger, I agree.
So the investigation, of course, is ongoing. And we have new interview sound from Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. So he knows he has been under a lot of scrutiny throughout this investigation for the handling of this, the handling of the scene, the handling of the media, what he is or isn't saying. And so he was asked about some of that today with our sister station. We work together with them. He says lots of valuable evidence is still being analyzed, both digital and DNA evidence. But one thing that was highly contested was the video of the abductor, that surveillance video. And we were talking about this the other week. There were sources that had come out to multiple media outlets, including our own, that said one of the pictures that shows the masked individual, the masked man with no backpack, and it looks like different lighting, was actually from a different day than the abductor video where he's knocking, he's putting the plants up on the door, and then that camera is disabled. Sources have said those were from 2 different days. We also know that PCSD has been asking neighbors for surveillance video starting from the first of the year, first of the month. So Sheriff Nanos was asked about that because they have said that there's no timestamps on the video to prove that. The confusion there was that when this investigation began and they had their first and only press conference, they had timestamps in that timeline that said exactly when somebody was detected on the camera.
See, the thing is, even if they put them there, even if they say, let's say that we get the DNA results back and we figure out the person that was in there. Okay, so at that point, what's next, though? What's next? Because how are they going to put them there on that day? That's going to be the hardest part. And that's why I said he did so good that they're going to have to be able to prove that this suspect was there on that day that Nancy went missing. If they can't do that, that's the next step after they find out who it is in this genealogy. It's going to be a long, long road because once they find him, I don't know how they're going to make it stick. And I truly agree. They do have, you know, with Shannon there, they do have more evidence than we know, but I don't think they have enough to go get this guy and put him behind bars right now. I don't even think they have enough to go get him just to put him down for a little bit, you know, while they figure this whole thing out. You know, but this is how the FBI works. They figure it all out, they put it all together, and then they hit you with it all at once. You know, they make sure they have enough to charge a person with what, you know, occurred. You know, so I don't know how they're going to be able to make this really stick. You know, because there's, as we all saw just watching, like, you know, JLR stream, for instance, there were many people coming by. You had the pool cleaner coming by. You got landscaping coming by. You know, there's a lot of people coming by. And we also saw some people coming in and doing something inside of the home, and we don't even know what they were doing. At one point, a guy came by and hung up cameras. Remember, there were cameras inside the home, so I don't know whether or not they got cameras re-put up inside of the home, but I'm just saying it could be one of those people who went inside of the home for whatever reason. You know, it doesn't really say to me for sure that this is our suspect just because they found DNA in the house that isn't anybody that's family related. But the thought of it, we're like, you know, we're overthinking it, because I think from time to time we all have someone come in our house that's not a part of the family. So what are they saying? Are they saying they're for sure that this is the suspect's DNA? They can't. It's a possibility, though. This might be the guy that was there that night. But what's next? What's next?
When that camera was disabled, and then when Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker detached or disconnected from her phone. So there had to be timestamps at some point. Chris Nanos was asked about that today, and whether or not there is a timestamp.
That's one of the main pieces that I want to hear as well, that 911 call. We heard when it was dispatched out. I always play it. Well, I play it here and there. I played it the last two streams. Yeah, that dispatch call would be great to hear. And who made the call? We don't even know who made the call. Maybe someone does. I don't, though.
On that picture that is from an alleged different day, which would suggest that the abductor had been at Nancy Guthrie's home before. Here's what he said about it.
Was there a timestamp at some point in time? Could have been. Well, that image they gave us doesn't have that. What I tell people is this: they say, well, of course it's 2 different days. Look at the lighting, or look at the different attire he's in, or whatever. I look at that video and go, I have no way of knowing that that's 2 different days. I understand someone might assume that, someone might speculate that, but we don't work on assumptions or speculation. We work on evidence. And the evidence in front of us tells us you have a man dressed in this attire in one image, and you have him dressed this way in another image. There is no way to with certainty say this is a different day. Somebody might be able to speculate that, but again, Ben.
So that's the guy he's talking about right there, that we thought that, you know, we're all for sure that this was a different day, even though we don't have the proof. We don't even have the proof that he visited the house on a different day. Maybe they do, and we just don't know that, like, because we all think that they have more than we know. So maybe they think, but it hasn't even been confirmed that this is a different day. What has been confirmed that they don't know the dates. They don't have the dates. So we can't even say what day. We just assume, oh, it was somewhere around February 11th. You know, he's doing good for sure, man. We just really haven't really found really enough to lead us up to really pinning this person that went there. Could be Luke, and he's just sitting here the whole time laughing in our face.
That image they gave us doesn't have that. What I tell people is this: they say, "Well, of course it's 2 different days. Look at the lighting, or look at the different attire he's in, or whatever." I look at that video and go, I have no way of knowing that that's 2 different days. I understand someone might assume that, someone might speculate that, but we don't work on assumptions or speculation. We work on evidence. And the evidence in front of us tells us you have a man dressed in this attire in one image, and you have him dressed this way in another image. There is no way to, with certainty, say this is a different day.
They haven't even mentioned the pool house. Yeah, at one point I saw them like checking over there in the beginning. That was in the beginning of this thing. I don't recall them saying anything about that, actually. I think they said something, but I don't know for sure what it was. I think they mentioned it at one point. I don't know. No, I think it was someone else that I'm thinking about that actually mentioned it. So never mind. Yeah, they haven't mentioned the pool house at all. Yeah, I don't even think they mentioned anything much about the, it looks like a guest home back there as well, a little small guest home. But I guess they wouldn't have to mention anything about it if no one, you know, if the suspects didn't go in there at all. But I would suspect they would mention something about it, you know, but who knows? For all we know, that little guest-looking house or store, it might be storage. It might not even be a guest house. Looks like it could be more so like a little storage.
That. But again, evidence takes us there.
Little storage house.
Now let's talk about the gloves in the case, because Sheriff Nanos has asked about this. So we know that the DNA on this black glove, this pair of black gloves on the side of the road, ruled out.
I've never got distracted on the gloves. Like I overlooked the gloves the minute I heard about it. The gloves don't have me convinced. And then we have inexperienced FBI agents out here littering, you know, but you would think as a public, well, pretty much a public servant, you know, they would take care of the, you know, public environment, but it seems like they don't really care. And then they just made it that much harder. They made this investigation that much harder. You know, and they caused us another, to me, it's just another delay. Kind of like the ransom thing. It's just another delay. Because I feel like they're going to work on their biggest hit. You know, I feel like they got multiple people working on different things. But I think that ransom was a setback.
Worker. But there has been conversation about there being multiple gloves found in this investigation. Are they related? Are they not? Sheriff Nanos is asked about it, and here's what he says.
There's stories out there that, oh, it's from the search teams and the deputies were just throwing their gloves everywhere. Well, that is so far from the truth. That's just bunk. We know that our search and rescue team.
It's not bunk, because they found out that a lot of those gloves came back to a lot of the agents that were out there. What are you talking about, Sheriff?
Last night? They were out last night. Go tell me you find gloves laying around. That's not how they work. They're very well trained. They're very well experienced. And to be honest with you, every glove we've issued in this department to all of our search and rescues and our department members, for decades, they're blue. They're not black. Just those are silly things that people make statements of, and then they just grow.
Here's the problem.
That's possible. However, they were referring to the FBI the agents, not the sheriff. The FBI agents were the ones going to the door to door. There were a lot of sheriff out there when this thing unfolded in the beginning, but they were just there to pretty much be security, because there were so many people on the road.
People make statements of, and then they just grow.
Here's the problem with that soundbite that Sheriff Nanos just said. He said this wouldn't be from any deputies, anything like that. The problem is that on February 16th, PCSD put out an update, and they point to a statement being released by the FBI in conjunction with them. And in that PCSD email, it says, quote, investigators collected approximately 16 gloves in various areas near the house. Most of them were searchers' gloves that they discarded in various areas when they searched the vicinity. The searchers, the investigators, This is why this is so confusing. Now, that was something that the FBI put out that PCSD agreed with, but in the end, there were official on the record statements being made that the searchers in this investigation and the investigators found gloves discarded during that time. So yeah, this is where people are really confused about what gloves belong to who and where they were found. Are they being tested in the investigation or are they not? That comment is very confusing to a lot of people for that reason. Sheriff Nanos also addressed some other things. And as we're going to get into my analysis of the Luke Daly interview and the Mary Daly interview, he was asked if Luke Daly and Carlos, who was also detained and released, the DoorDash driver that was since, investigated, are these two men cleared? The only people before today that Sheriff Nanos has said are cleared are the Guthrie siblings and their spouses and the Guthrie family as suspects or potential suspects in this case. So are Luke Daly and Carlos cleared? Here's what he said.
What I will say is we had what we believed to be probable cause to take action against both those individuals and the residence they occupied. That probable cause that we felt was strong was given to the U.S. attorney, the county attorney, and a magistrate, a judge. And they agreed that, yes, here's a warrant, go perform your duties.
It's like these guys don't make any sense. Or this guy doesn't make any sense at all.
And we got what we got from it, and we're moving on.
We're moving on. So he didn't say, yes, they are cleared, or no, they are not, but simply, we are moving on. So you can kind of take from that what you will. Nanos went on to say after that soundbite that there have been no other search warrants served that he is aware of any other persons of interest in this case so far. As far as persons of interest go, they obviously have search warrants digitally and all things like that. But as far as potential persons of interest, potential people in this case, there have been no other search warrants served. Let's talk about my interviews with Luke and Mary Daly earlier this week down in Tucson. I'm monitoring some of the comments here on my computer as we go, and I'm so happy that you guys are commenting and asking questions. Please ask me more. One thing that I just saw was, what were the conditions of my interviews with Luke and Mary? Was there a time limit? Were there certain questions, etc.? The answer to that is no, and I'll give you a little bit of behind the scenes. I had been working with the attorney in this case. This is a well-known attorney in Arizona. We've actually worked with him on other cases. He is the one representing Luke and Mary. We came in, we put up our whole setup, and we did our interview one by one. Luke first, Mary second. I made a list of questions that I wanted to ask. His attorney was in there and could step in if he needed to or wanted to, and that is very standard when we do interviews with either alleged criminals, alleged suspects, people detained and released. Typically, an attorney is in there with us, and they can choose.
I wonder how they got this interview with Luke. I wonder why he chose them. I wonder if they tracked him down and, begged for this interview, but from what he said in the video, he did want to clear his name. But if you're innocent, you're innocent. What would make a difference of you clearing your name versus you staying quiet if you're innocent, I guess. I think he hurt his character even more by doing an interview, because this world is super judgmental, and we criticize the hell out of everybody. We all do it, and like I said, he put himself out there to be criticized even more, and I really don't think that it was a good idea to do an interview if you're Luke, but maybe his lawyer provoked him to do it.
If they want to step in or not. But I knew I was going one by one, and there was also one other media outlet, a national media outlet that was doing interviews as well, that was also there. So basically, I asked all the questions I wanted to, but I was still very respectful of the time and of the fact that Luke and Mary, no matter what you think, they are not being charged with any crime in this case as of now, which means from my standpoint as a journalist and as an interviewer,
from what I heard, a lot of people in UK are following this case. I've heard the case has expanded through other countries, but don't quote me on it.
Treat them as such. Some of you may have seen my interviews with Lori Vallow Daybell, a convicted child killer who was convicted by the time I interviewed her. You might have also seen my interview with the man who is facing charges for allegedly crucifying a pastor here in Arizona and confessing to it. To me, those two interviews, sit down, very serious in a crime case, are different than the interviews I did with the dailies because they're not charged with anything. They were detained and released. And so, yes, did I have questions about where they were, what they were doing, what those detainments were like? Absolutely. But are these two different people than the convicted criminals or confessed criminals that I have interviewed? Absolutely. And the respect on my end as an interviewer must come from being direct and professional with them, but respectful of the fact that they are not facing any charges. So that's a little bit about my mindset when I'm interviewing them, what that looks like from my end. The main thing I wanted to ask Luke Daly was, hey, a lot of people believe you look like and are the guy that is the abductor in the Nancy Guthrie video. It's one of the questions I started with. Here's what he said.
Many people have believed that you are the person on the surveillance video, the abductor, the masked person. Is that you?
It's not me. I don't see the resemblance of it looking like me, but absolutely not. I have nothing to do with this case.
Nothing to do with it. Do you have any idea who is involved in the abduction?
I don't. If I did, I would happily tell FBI, police, anything. I mean, I, like everyone else, just want Nancy to come home.
It looks like Luke just recently shaved.
I'm gonna be safe, but that being said,
he also has a scar on his lip. So I don't know if you guys remember, but you can see the lip under the mask, and under the mask, at the very top of the lip, you can see there's a scar at the top of the lip. So it's very close to not Carlos, but Dominic. Dominic is a very close potential suspect to me as well. I was trying to find a picture of the masked suspect that we seen in front of Nancy's home, but I don't know if I still have it. But you'll see like kind of like a scar almost exactly where Luke's lip is at. So if you notice, let me see if I can put the arrow here. If you notice right about here, it's very, very close to where Luke's is at. But Luke's, in my opinion, it looks a little bit higher. The eyes to me also look a little bit different when you see this picture right here. It's almost like it's a different person when you see the side view. I don't know. It's a really tough. But I think somebody made an AI part of it, so it kind of is confusing. But, I mean, Luke does have a scar. He does have the facial hair. I mean, he definitely has the build. There's just a lot of things that align him with, you know, us thinking that he could be potentially the guy. So
nothing to do with this case, and that's it.
So he says that is not him unequivocally in the video, no matter what people say. So then I wanted to ask him, well, how did this all unfold that Friday night when you guys were detained? He said that two sheriff's vehicles were what started out as following him driving home. He said he was then pulled over by that Culver's, and you can see the video of that Range Rover search. We have some of that in our system. But he said as he was driving home, then he was pulled over. He said he was asked to get out of his car, but they didn't say what they were actually doing. Here you go. You can see the FBI agents here. That's his Range Rover, the gray silver Range Rover.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys watched the video with Luke, but remember he was saying that they didn't tell him what was going on. Remember I had talked about that earlier in this video. And it does state that law enforcement is generally required by law to tell you why they are arresting you. So just keep that in mind. That's why I said I don't know if Luke was necessarily telling the truth, because I believe even if they didn't tell him at the moment in time, at some point in time, they were going to tell him what was going on, why he was, either detained or why they got the search warrant. I think at some point he learned why they were able to do that. It's not gonna be a questionable thing, and you're going around saying, yeah, they just raided me for no reason. You're gonna know why you got raided. You're gonna know. So Luke is lying.
There. They asked him to get out. They put him in the back of a car while they searched and processed that Range Rover outside the Culver's. But he says this is when things were at least relatively confusing to him as to why he was being questioned. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Near anywhere or have any connection to this. The whole time while I'm sitting in the back of the cop car, I'm like panicking, thinking that I'm going to be framed for this, or they're trying to pin this on me somehow.
Did they tell you what led them to you? I mean, something made them believe they needed to talk to you about it. What was that?
I asked them. They didn't tell me any information about that. And I have thought of some type of reason why they could have come after me. But there's nothing, and I think that's why they didn't tell me.
Were you in the area of the home at the time, like the overnight, or would it have been something like, we've tracked this person near the abduction scene?
I live near her house, but I mean, I didn't even know that until after the fact. Like, I barely just learned where her actual house was in relation to mine.
Okay, and so some people have...
Yeah, but here's the thing. They had to get the search warrant granted through the judge. They didn't just have no probable cause at all. They had to have some type of probable cause in order for them to do that. So why he's sitting here acting like he has no absolute idea why they detained him, how they got the search warrant, he's not saying any of that. And maybe his lawyer told him not to disclose that information because of the investigation, and maybe it may expose the fact of what they're looking for. I doubt it though. Why would he do that? But as you did hear, she did say that they had an attorney, and I believe at one point in time she spoke to that attorney. But again, I just don't feel like Luke is being straightforward. And like I said, his mother, when she did her interview, she seemed to be the more straightforward one than him. I was looking for Luke on Instagram. If you guys know, if you guys have his Instagram, let me know. I think he must have taken all of his social media down because of what's going on is what I was assuming, because I couldn't find him. I didn't look on Facebook, but I was trying to find his social media. I could not find it though.
Said that they thought
I feel like a lot of these guys have taken down their social media. The only person I've seen that had their social media up, I didn't look for Tommaso's, but Annie, I believe, has an Instagram. As far as any other platforms, I'm not sure.
Confusing that he told me that once a lot more FBI agents showed up, that he was like, oh, this must be for Nancy. And a lot of people were like, well, why would he just assume that was for Nancy, especially because he does have a criminal past with drugs. To that, I would say, at least from my standpoint, it was odd that there'd be so many sheriff's deputies and FBI agents surrounding him, and his mom was paying attention to the case. She had talked to him about it, and so it's possible that because he saw there were so many FBI agents also coming out, that he assumed that it was about Nancy Guthrie. But some people have questioned why he just assumed that that would be about Nancy as opposed to any other crime case in the area. But, again, is there typically FBI at a crime, at a possible just traffic stop in Tucson? No, not typically. So he is detained with his Range Rover. at the Culvers.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, at his home, you have this operation that was going on, another SWAT operation. But this time, his mom, Mary, was detained, and she thought that they were actually coming to the house just to see what she might have information-wise in the case. But she says that is when she's taken out, put in the back of a cop car, and she has no idea what's going on. Listen to what she had to say.
They were there for about 6 hours, and I was in the SWAT vehicle, and they went through my house and went through everything and tore everything, broke my, if the door was locked, they would break it open to go see what was in there. There really wasn't anything in there.
She was not very honest.
You know, it was pretty upsetting.
Well, and it's one thing to come to you and say, do you have any video or anything like that? It's another to detain you and search your house with a search warrant. Did they tell you why?
I guess I assumed, you know, because I lived close by or something, but I just said I'd do anything to, if we could find some clues that might help, but I don't think there's going to be anything in here, but go ahead and look.
So when they detained you, did you know that this was related to also them investigating Luke?
No.
You had no idea?
No, I wasn't thinking this was about Luke. You know, I found out it was also about Luke, but initially, no, I was thinking it was all about Nancy Guthrie and finding her and whatnot. So, because I was thinking, I don't even think Luke probably ever watched the news and even saw Savannah on the news. I mean, I did.
Right. So when did you learn that, you know, your detainment was related to Luke's detainment in this case?
When? I'm not exactly sure when, because honestly, during this time, I was really emotional, and there were lots of information coming in, and so I don't remember exactly the time, but I know that in retrospect, I know all this stuff that it did, but initially I didn't think of it being Luke as part of this, because I knew it wasn't something that Luke would be involved in any way, and he wasn't. So, yeah.
And when you learned that, was there any thought that was, could he have been involved?
No, I didn't think he ever could have been involved.
I feel like she could have asked a lot better questions. I don't know why she wasn't answering better questions. I think you could tell that Jessica was trying to keep it really respectful. Is her name Jessica? I think her name is Jessica. You could tell she was really trying to keep it respectful right there. You could just tell she wanted to ask a more realer question, but it was more like...
No, I didn't think he ever could have
sugar-coated, I guess.
He have been involved? When you learned that, was there any thought that was, could he have been involved?
Could he have been involved?
I didn't think he...
You know, I think that was the only edgy question she asked, but I think she should have asked more serious questions, like more... She just didn't really ask the best questions, you know. I mean, it was a good interview. I was glad to see Luke sit down and talk, just because we all kind of want to get to know who that guy may be, you know, and we all got to get that vibe. We got a glimpse of that vibe, at least.
Ever could have been involved.
And Mary stands by that. She absolutely does not believe Luke was involved at all. So where does it stand with the dailies? Well, Luke said that he has...
Yeah, FBI just showed up to his house for no reason, right?
Back, so that can lead us to assume and believe that car was completely processed. They don't need it anymore in the investigation. They've given it back. But the Daily family has dealt with immense online speculation and comments, even after this interview. I mean, I posted these interviews in full, posted clips from them, and even in the face of them being detained and released, obviously the sheriff now saying they're moving on from the people who were detained, at least in some capacity, whatever that means. There's still many people that believe that Luke is involved, and that's really hard for a family who isn't facing any charges but has to live in public right now while this is all going on. So Luke talks about the fact that he's having a hard time because he doesn't even know really what led them to him, but also people are, you know, suspicious of him out and about to where he feels like he can't even function in public.
Online, it just seems like they're pushing this narrative and trying to make connections with things that are, I don't know, basically like circumstantial, like saying my eyelashes match the guy in the ski mask picture, which I'm sure like if you could use anyone's picture and find similarities.
And you don't recognize the person on that?
I could agree with that.
In that footage?
No, I don't.
Did somebody yell no in the background?
In that footage?
No, I don't.
And you don't recognize?
Which eyelashes match the guy in the ski mask picture, which I'm sure like if you could use anyone's picture and find similarities.
And you don't recognize the person on that? In that footage?
No, I don't.
Somebody yelled like no in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but somebody yells no, like it's like somebody told him to say no. Like what?
The person on that?
You could use anyone's picture and find similarities.
And you don't recognize the person on that? In that footage?
No, I don't.
Right before he says no, I don't.
In that footage?
No, I don't. But in terms of all this, like I said, they're comparing my face to this. They're talking about my Range Rover, which I didn't even buy until after she was reported missing.
It was a new car, yeah? For you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're talking about another car that was towed off my property. That car wasn't an accident, has nothing to do with this. It wasn't towed in relation to this case. It was being towed by the insurance company to assume if it was totaled or not. So,
yeah, that's the car that I was questioning when they went there the very next day after they raided his home. Whether or not that car may have been in an accident after the kidnapping, maybe during the day that the kidnapping happened. But he's saying the car was, you know, getting towed to see if it was going to be deemed a total loss or not. So, you know, it seems like it checks out, you know, as far as what he's saying. You know, and then if he was able to prove that he bought that Range Rover after the kidnapping, that may have helped him out a little bit as well, because I think that they were under the impression that the Range Rover was going to be part of this whole thing. It was going to be that getaway car. So
had nothing to do with the case. There's no evidence to point towards me other than speculation.
You really have no idea what led them to you in this case?
Absolutely not.
Still a mystery to you?
Yes, and I would love to find out.
Now, his attorney says they have not seen the sealed federal search warrant. His attorney has also said that they will possibly pursue legal action against what happened to the Dailies in this case. Now, I do want to show you guys some behind-the-scenes footage that we shot of the interview. This is not something I would typically do, but I posted this on social media. We had shot some behind-the-scenes footage as we were just preparing for the interview. I want to take this full, Jason, if you can, just to show the full aspect here. The reason why I showed this was people wanted to see what he looked like walking in, what he looked like.
I showed this yesterday.
Any sort of, body jewelry, markings, etc. And, I wouldn't normally post something like this, but people were curious, and we don't have anything to hide from the video that we have here as we were getting ready. So this is what Luke looked like when he came in. He was very respectful of us, again, not facing any charges, but people have wanted to see this raw stuff, this raw footage so much just to kind of see what he looked like, trying to kind of...
Why did she call it raw footage? She didn't have to call it raw footage.
Charges, but people have wanted to see this raw stuff, this raw.
Why is he looking around like that? I mean, he does look suspect, though. I'm not gonna lie, he really does. But I mean, you just never know. You just never know. He could be doing this to stay under the radar, just to, and then imagine it is him and he's really actually getting away with this. That would be the most terrifying part about this, you know, but we would never know, so I guess it would never be terrifying at all. It was sad as fall, man. Damn.
Footage so much just to kind of see what he looked like, what, you know, trying to kind of see, oh my gosh, well, could he walk like the person that's on the video? And again, I just want to say that he has been detained and released in this case. He is not facing any charges as of now. And so you can at least see what he's wearing. There's been a lot of people who have commented and been kind of suspicious of the fact that he was wearing long sleeves and warm clothes. Meanwhile, people have commented, I had on a sleeveless dress.
Yeah, good night, Hansel. Thanks so much for plugging in
tonight. It was 90
tonight.
degrees in Arizona on Monday. I was hot, and that's how I function, and I wear clothes like that. I don't know what Luke wants to wear or what he typically wears. Maybe he felt this was the best outfit or clothing he had for an interview, a sit-down interview. I have no idea, but you can see at least here, we wanted to pull back the layer and show you, look, here's what we have. You can look at this video. I know people will make their own opinions and assumptions, but again, Luke Daly, as of now, is not facing any charges in this investigation. There have been no other search warrants served, according to Sheriff.
I wanted to go
today.
back to
the
this
reason
real
why I
quick.
showed this was people wanted to see what he looked like walking in, what he looked like, what he was wearing, any sort of you know, body jewelry, markings, etc. And you know,
And then it's just that double chin for me too.
I wouldn't normally post something like this, but people were curious, and we don't have anything to hide from the video that we have here as we were getting ready. So this is what Luke looked like when he came in. He was very respectful of us, again, and not facing any charge.
And it's just the hands that,
Look
you know,
like when
we
he
need,
came
that's why I
in,
said we
he
need
was
a
very
doctor up in
respectful
here or
of us,
something,
again,
man, so
not
they can
facing
determine
any
whether or not
charges,
those
but
hands are
people have
swollen. Not that they would even be able to eyeball it. I think they'd probably have to be physically seeing Luke in person
video that we have here as we
for
were
us
getting
to be
ready.
able
So
to
this
know
is
if
what
his
Luke
hands
looked like
are
when he
swollen or
came
not.
in. He was very respectful of us, again.
And
not
it's crazy
facing
because I thought that that's a lot of times how they can figure stuff out, you know,
This
by
is what
looking
Luke
at the
looked
hands.
like when he came in.
And the fact that he wore a long sleeve to me and one of the most talked about parts as well, you know, as far as what we saw when we saw that suspect in front of our home has been the tattoo on the wrist. So it's almost like he's trying to hide his wrist, you know, for whatever reason. You know, I don't know if he has tattoos.
Respectful.
I have no
as we
idea,
were
but
getting
I don't
ready.
know
So
why
this is
the
what
long
Luke
sleeve.
looked like
Maybe it
when
was
he
just
came
what he
in.
had nice to
He was very
wear.
respectful of us, again.
But I also still feel like those hands look a little swollen. And that, you know, at first I was saying it was the one on the right, you know, well, left because we're facing him. But I feel like something's wrong with the right hand and the left one might be swollen. And I was trying to see if I could zoom in on that hand just real quick because I've been looking at his hands a lot. But his hand definitely went down since the last, maybe his hand got hurt because he was, you know, in the car accident or something. I don't know. Trying to see if I can zoom in on that hand. Just want to see what it looks like. Oh, man.
Not facing any charges, but people have wanted to see this raw stuff, this raw footage so much just to kind of...
Yeah, I have no idea why she's calling it raw. But let me, or raw footage. I just want to see that hand real quick.
see this full of us, again, not facing any charges, but people have wanted to see respectful of us, again.
Yeah, it's almost like there's something wrong with that left hand, but not the right. But they both look like they're swollen. That one on the left that I'm looking at, it looks like it's swollen to me. And I don't want you guys to be confused because, it's one of them situations where it's his left, my right, type of deal. So I'll put the arrow on the hand that I'm talking about. I feel like that hand, it seems like there's something wrong with that hand. But I could be wrong. It just could be the way his, the form of his hand. But it also looks swollen as well. And then as of the other hand, to me, it just looks swollen to me. So, I don't know. To me, that's really, really suspicious. And then when they made that stop, when they raided his home and then he was detained, even then, the hand was even more swollen at that time. And I'm not taking away the fact that he got into a car accident, but, I'm just saying normally your hand doesn't get swollen unless you hit your hand or something, obviously. In a car accident, normally your hand's not the one thing that's hurt. So I don't know. I don't know, Luke. But due to the fact that that hand was super swollen was super suspicious to me. And it still is. So I don't know. I still don't know what to think about Luke. I still don't know what to think about Dominic as well. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. We'll just have to really wait and see what's going to happen with this case. I know the Kunjan Navy was trying to get involved. However, it's Nanos' call. And I don't know if he feels like they're going to figure other things out or something, but they'll focus on whatever that is the focus. I don't think that they'll look for anything else. If we were to get them out here to help us search for Nancy, maybe he thinks we're too far into this and it's not worth even sending them out there, and also maybe it costs a lot of money and he's, from what I overheard, that he was already spending or he had already spent too much money, or as far as the budgeting goes, I have no idea though.
Joining us now, Brian Trasher, the Vice President of the United Cajun Navy, now in Arizona offering to help in a search for Nancy Guthrie. And it's my understanding, Brian Trasher, that Nanos has not responded. He needs all the help he can get. So I'm not sure what his delay is. But Brian, I want to ask you a pointed question. I noticed online that the United Cajun Navy is being attacked for soliciting donations. Aren't these volunteers? They don't expect to be paid. So are you soliciting donations? And if so, why?
So no, we've not asked for any donations or posted any donation links the entire time we've been in Arizona. That it's just internet trolls that we get every time we go anywhere. We've also publicly declined that we would take any reward if we qualified for any, or directed to the Center for Missing and Exploited Persons or Children, I think is the name of the organization. No, this isn't about donations. We already have very generous donors that have allowed us to be out in this assessment so that we could submit this detailed 41-page tactical plan to assist in the search for Nancy Guthrie.
What are you offering to Nanos, and what's his problem? Is he out at another basketball game and hasn't been able to respond?
So, we have a lot of volunteers and assets. We have a lot of folks that are very experienced, current and former law enforcement, military, all that kind of thing. Canine dogs, which are extremely beneficial in these types of searches. The first time we reached out just with a general offer, we did hear back from the PIO saying that they were not accepting help from external organizations. So we kind of, after Josh was out there finishing his assessment, we put together a full operational package and figured it couldn't hurt to submit it one more time, just so they would know that, we've come a long way from being just a bunch of guys on boats pulling people off of roofs. We really do have a lot of really amazing assets and capabilities. This time, I don't believe we've gotten any answer at all. I think they've just kind of stuck to their mantra that they want to leave it to the professionals. But we'd like to remind everybody that Noah's Ark was built by amateurs. The Titanic was built by professionals. I'm not sure why we couldn't be a force multiplier for him in this situation.
He was the one who made that quote that I was mentioning earlier when I mentioned the amateurs making Noah's Ark, and and then he mentioned that professionals built the Titanic. I thought that was a really that hit hard. That hit hard because I think to me, that's basically like saying that, just because he's an amateur doesn't mean that he couldn't have figured it out, because so far it seems like he figured out how to get away with this, so we'll see. Lisa, big welcomes, by the way.
Guys, with me, Brian Trasher, VP of the United Cajun Navy, offering to help Nanos. This as Nanos is coming under fire from inside his own department. And yes, we could talk about that for the rest of our program, but it really doesn't advance the search for Nancy Guthrie to talk about what went wrong, except really what has been missed, when was it missed, and can it be fixed? But, Brian Fitzgibbons, I want to follow up on what Trasher just said. Brian Fitzgibbons joining us from USPA Nationwide Security. When you don't know a horse, look at his track record. We see Nanos turning down the Cajun Navy. We see him trying to shut out the feds, which was such a bad move, and we lost many, many days lead time on that move before the feds were finally brought in. And now it looks like he's doing it again.
Yeah, and it's important to point out here that a lot of law enforcement agencies simply don't have the mechanism or built to accept what would be very profitable help from the public and resources like the Cajun Navy. And that's disheartening to see. Adding to this, the Pima County Deputies Organization has been tremendously critical of Nanos' leadership in the past year. There have been votes of no confidence. And there's been a mass exodus of talented investigators in the last 12 months. So this has been widely reported by spokespeople from the Pima County Deputies Organization, which is their unionized body.
And where I'm going with this, Dave Mack, and this is to Brian Trasher from United Cajun Navy, is, see, this is at 2.5 miles away from Nancy's home. They had originally set up a dragnet, a radius of search 2 miles. And this was just outside that video from our friends at Fox, by the way. If volunteers had been used, maybe that restaurant glove, other gloves, this video would have been found sooner. Now, I understand the problems with chain of custody. You can't hand over video to a volunteer. You got to hold up the chain, hand that video over to law enforcement. But the Cajun Navy volunteers could have gone from 2 miles out, continued the search, gone door to door, asking people if they have surveillance video.
Yeah, so this is why they were going door to door. I think they have an idea of what direction the suspect may have went, so they went door to door in that direction that they think he went. To me, 2.5 is a little far away for us to be trying to find our vehicle, but we do have the suspicion that they didn't travel through any light intersections with cameras. If they were smart, they would have went neighborhood to neighborhood, to get to wherever their destination was. But it could be so that we just so happened to find this vehicle, and this is the actual vehicle that Nancy was in. It could be highly possible, but I don't think so. I just don't feel it. Not feeling it.
And then letting them hand it over to authorities. I mean, there's so much you guys could be doing and are willing to do.
A car. What
this
up,
is just
Bird,
one example.
Paradise,
see, we're 20 plus days into it before we find out about that neighbor's video. That is a shame, and it could have been corrected.
Yeah, you're right. And, we work with law enforcement agencies and agencies like the Coast Guard all the time. And what they do is they give us specific grids, say, this is where we want you guys to search. And it's almost always separate and apart from where their own personnel are. So we're not interfering with their actual personnel. They don't ever give us any kind of evidence or things that aren't released to the public. I mean, they have to keep the chain of custody of those things tight. We understand that. But that's the whole part, Nancy, of being a force multiplier is that you say, hey, this is how far my agency can go. This is where we want the Cajun Navy to start out here. Just like in Texas after the Hill Country floods, we were working downriver from the Coast Guard and the Texas Rangers just in case there was anything that got past them. That's how NGOs like us can work with official agencies very, very symbiotically and hopefully bring some good resolution to these families that are missing loved ones.
Anyway, I thought I'd share that because I thought that was an interesting video with Nancy just the other day. But man, oh man, oh man. I think I had an interesting point about what comes next earlier. I just feel like once we find this DNA, like I said, they got to put up that genealogy. They got put up that genealogy tree, you know, of the family of whoever this guy may be, or it's going to lead us, you know, to the actual person that was in her house. Again, it's someone that's not family related, that, you know, they can't say if it's someone that, they can't say it was the suspect that night, though. They have to be able to somehow put that suspect there for whoever's DNA that is. But if it matches the person that is in the video, for whomever that they find, because they'll be able to find somebody in a family, I think, relatively quick once they figure out the DNA, because they'll put up that DNA tree of whomever family member it is and look through all of those family members. And I think they're going to investigate the person that's probably the closest looking to the person in that video that we see of the night that, you know, Nancy was taken. We don't even have the dates on the video, so honestly, we really can't even say if that was the night that Nancy was taken when we saw that video. If that video was the night of, you know, when she was taken. But, you know, I don't even, you know, does she even know? I don't even know that Nancy would even notice that her Ring camera was gone, you know. I feel like that's something that would take her time to come to realization about. But also, we don't know how relatively that Nancy checked her Ring camera when every single time, you know, that motion sensor went off. You know, some people are really crazy about checking their cameras, and other people just have the cameras up there and don't hardly ever look at them. So it's a lot to think about. It really is. I just hope that they're able to really track this guy down. But I think, as we all know, it's just going to take a lot of time. It's not going to be, I wouldn't even say it's going to be even 2 weeks from now at this point. But we got Brian Enton here, who, you know, and at JLR, they've extended their stay. They're going to be here for God knows how much longer, but it's going to be sad if they're here all this time, you know, because it's already been a while since they've all been here. And then it turns out, you know, it's going to be even longer. Are these guys going to continue to stay months and months at this point? Because we're already in month 2 that Nancy's been missing. And we got some people in the media world that just haven't given up. So, I mean, and as they should, we appreciate it. But I'm just saying, at what point are we going to realize that this either is going to take a while or we're just not going to catch our suspect? You know, how long do you wait?
Visna, an AI-driven 3D search and analytics company. 2019, he was one of Forbes magazine's 30 under 30. Show off, but great to have you here nonetheless. All right, Brian, I want to start with you. Okay, it seems investigators are taking this theory pretty seriously, but can you provide more clarity on it? Like how widespread it was, how long this would have lasted, you know, this jammer situation? Was it just one night? I mean, what do we know about it?
So we know this started because we found out that the FBI agents were asking the neighbors if they experienced an internet disruption or outage right around the time that Nancy Guthrie went missing, which was around 2 a.m. on February 1st. Come to find out, one of the neighbors who lives behind Nancy Guthrie tells me that he realized that the 2 Ring cameras on the back of his house, so the part that are actually closest to Nancy Guthrie's house, became inactive during that time period, which has never happened happened before. And he's, of course, reported that now to the FBI. Also interesting, Jesse, one of his dogs actually woke up at that same time, which he says is very unusual in the middle of the night, and wanted to go outside and then was staring in the direction of Nancy Guthrie's house.
So let me ask about this, Paul. Based on what we're seeing
really
here, I'm going to leave the floor to you. You saw the video, the picture where it might appear that this suspect has a jammer in the back pocket. You heard the description laid out by Brian. Is this all consistent with somebody purchasing and using some sort of jamming signal device? What would it do? Does it seem consistent?
It does, considering the proximity. So these Wi-Fi jammers typically have a range of between like 30 to 100 feet. And so the investigators are doing exactly what you'd expect them to do, calling around and asking, did everybody's Wi-Fi signal get jammed at the exact same time? And considering that it was the two Ring cameras in the backside of the house closest to Nancy Guthrie's house, it sounds like it was probably a pretty short-range Wi-Fi jammer. We can't know for sure, though, but if you look at the router logs and see, did Wi-Fi signal go down, but was the internet still on, but the Wi-Fi signal was lost? In other words, if you had an Ethernet connection, you would still have been connected to the internet, but you lose the Wi-Fi signal, because that's actually what's being jammed. It's not the internet, it's just the Wi-Fi signal.
And by the way, the router wouldn't pick it up, right?
Well, what happened is the router would, you lose the connection between the device and the router, right?
Okay.
So the connection that you're looking for is either a 2.4 gigahertz or a 5 gigahertz connection. So that frequency gets jammed by those handheld Wi-Fi jammers. And so if you see that, you know, for instance, the internet's still active, but suddenly you've lost connection to one of those devices that was connected by Wi-Fi, and that happened with multiple devices, that would definitely indicate that it was probably a Wi-Fi jammer.
Just want to follow up on that, Paul, because you might look at the photos and the videos that were taken from Nancy's Ring camera of this suspect. It's quite clear in quality, and the fact that we have it, would that suggest that perhaps there wasn't a jammer used?
That's actually what I've been wondering this entire time. So the thing is, you can jam a signal and still actually get the video uploaded. So when you're using Ring, 99% of the time that footage gets uploaded to the cloud. So it's actually possible that you have a Wi-Fi jammer, and it just so happens that the footage gets uploaded before the Wi-Fi signal's jammed. What's perplexing about it, though, is, you know, why?
Yeah, I think I overheard Brian extended out another month or something like that. It was a long time. I don't know if it was a month, but I mean, these guys already been there for an entire month already, so it's just like, I don't know how long this is gonna be. You know, I feel like it's almost at that point where these guys will have to just probably just go home and then come back and revisit it. You know.
Did he physically remove the camera if he had a Wi-Fi jammer, unless it was just to be extra?
I feel like it's at the same time we need to keep these guys here and people like us streaming this stuff, you know, to be able to, you know, keep the pressure on these guys to figure something out soon, because there's a lot of people waiting.
For safe, I guess. Maybe that's the case.
Well, see, so Brian, let me go back to you. Nobody knows this case better than you. Two parts to this. Does it make sense to you that this was so professional, this was so organized, using a device like this? And also, has there been any evidence that is actually some sort of jamming device in the back pocket, that it is an antenna? What have you been hearing from your sources and on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's possible that it was a walkie-talkie, Jesse. I think that's a real possibility, because this person may not have wanted to bring their phone to the house knowing that they could have been tracked, and was using that walkie-talkie to maybe communicate with a getaway driver that was parked, you know, blocks away. I think that could be the case, but the fact that the FBI is specifically now asking neighbors about an internet disruption, and that this one neighbor has this situation, and the other interesting thing is behind Nancy's house is like an area of open desert that this other neighbor lives on. So I'm wondering, you know, if this suspect came in through the desert, through the backside, maybe had the jammer on, and as they were passing houses on the backside, it was interfering with those Wi-Fi signals. So, you know, the neighbors may have been impacted not from when he was at Nancy Guthrie's house, but from when he was moving through the desert behind their homes. I think that could also be a possibility.
Now, I'm going to steal a question from Katie Pavlich that...
Yeah, because when you look at the video, it looks like he's either coming from the backyard or he's coming from somewhere on the side. They definitely did not pull up that vehicle until they knew it was safe and all those cameras were down, or whatever cameras there were. in place that they could have possibly been seen on, they definitely made sure those cameras were dismantled before moving forward at all, or whoever they called to pull up. It was more than one person for sure. This guy was smart enough to not bring his phone. He was smart. And it's like almost like, dang, was this a sheriff or something? It's got. I don't know. I think this is either going to be surprising or it's going to be super simple, and we overthought this thing the entire time.
Asked of you, Brian. Don't tell her. It's fine. But now I have Paul, so I want to ask him this. Is it possible a device like this could be used to disrupt someone's cell phone if they wanted to call 911, if they wanted to use, I don't know, 5G or Wi-Fi, well, definitely Wi-Fi, but 5G? I mean, could it disrupt someone's cell phone? So, I mean, again, the idea of if, let's say, somebody was about to call 911 or Nancy was going to call 911, anything we should be thinking about there?
I mean, it is theoretically possible, especially considering how a lot of cell phones are actually ultimately utilizing Wi-Fi at the end of the day to connect. Traditionally, though, you don't think so. Wi-Fi jammer doesn't normally interfere with most cell phones, with most cell signals. So it would be a pretty bold move to bring that a device like that and just assume that that's going to disrupt a cell signal. That's a little. I woun't bet on that if I had been that person.
Bold move. You're talking about somebody who went up to the mother of a TV star and abducted her. It's pretty crazy. Brian, as we finish up the week, go back to another key piece of evidence or potential key piece of evidence. Any updates on that vehicle that was caught on camera?
No, unfortunately, we haven't gotten a significant update from the sheriff on that, just that they're continuing to look at it. It hasn't been discounted. Something else interesting, though, just by the way, when it comes to the jammer and the cell phone stuff, I mean, right where Nancy's house is, where I'm standing, it's kind of in like a little dip in the road. There's almost no cell phone service here just regularly. I mean, you barely get even one bar down here.
Good point,
which is
Brian.
just kind of interesting to think about, too, as we learn that they seem to be having a hard time tracking the cell phones that were coming in and out of this area.
The glitches in that neighborhood as far as Wi-Fi service and cell phone services and stuff like that, they should be used to stuff like that. So I don't see why they would have took that, but maybe not, because there are certain parts of the area right outside of Nancy's home that the cell phone service is good. So I don't know about that one, Brian. Hold your horses there.
Yeah, that seems like it could be a component, too, that's making it more difficult, Jesse.
Just great. Just another complicating factor in this case. So disappointing.
I said the same
Brian
thing.
Enton, thank you so much for your terrific reporting, as always. And Paul Powers,
This guy was supposedly not good at what he did, but everything that he's done has been so complicated for us to figure out. Think about all of the things that we took notice of when we saw this guy taking whatever or getting that strub and putting it over that camera, just watching to see how he moved, when he kind of leaned to the side, from the moment that he walked up. I think everything has been clueless. It's just been so hard to figure it out. He's that good. It's been that good. Or we're just all, like I said, we're just all overthinking it. I can't call it. I can't call it anymore at this point. Because I'm really undecided based on whether or not they're going to be able to even figure this whole thing out. We'll stay in tune. We're going to continue to stay in tune. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to keep following this whole Nancy Guthrie case. We're not going nowhere. We can't not finish something that we started. We don't do that. Not at all. Guys, I want to thank you all for stopping by and plugging in tonight. I am going to end it here. Tune in with me tomorrow night around the same time, probably a little bit earlier, actually. But tune in. We'll talk more about Nancy Guthrie. Hopefully we'll get something tomorrow, although tomorrow's Sunday. A lot of things don't happen on Sundays, so we got to still hope that, at some point in time, because news is 24/7. So at some point in time, we got to hope we're going to get something. Hopefully that'll be tomorrow, All hopes high, all prayers for Nancy Guthrie. It's your boy, YouTube Juice. Thanks so much for stopping by and tuning in tonight. I will see y'all later, guys.
last seen at Skyline Drive in Campbell. Occurred on yesterday's date at 12:15 hours. Subject last name would be Guthrie, first of Nancy, date of birth 1/27 of 1942, 84-year-old white female, 5'4", 150, brown and blue, last name wearing unknown clothing description. Subject was not seen at church and family went to the residence and subject was not at home. All personal belongings, including a 1021 and wallet and vehicle, were still there. Subject is nowhere to be found. Subject suffers from limited mobility and has medication scheduled to follow up and needs daily. If located, check code 20 and contact Pima County Sheriff's Office. Again, last seen at Skyline and Campbell in Tucson. And the state alert at 12:35.
Stand by. There's copy. One item needs to be safe alert. One item safe alert will be out of Tucson, Skyline, and Campbell Avenue. We're on February 1st, approximately 12:15 hours. Subject A, Nancy Guthrie, date of birth 1/27, 84. White female, 5'4", 150 pounds, brown hair, blue eyes, lips. Description for unknown clothing. Those not seen at a church, family went to residence, subject was not at their home. 1021 wallet, vehicle were still there. Subject is, again, subject from limited mobility and medication schedule that they need followed. Is located, contact 2 PD.